But tonight's program is part of our Catskill Regional Leadership Institute. This is a program we receive funding from the LTA, the Land Trust Alliance, to provide programs and training for elected officials and other interested people about ways that we can utilize public lands for economic development and tourism. And so tonight's program obviously fits into that perfectly. We have Tina Solak. She is here from Pennsylvania. She moved there in 2005 and has a degree in broadcast journalism. So originally she sought employment with a local radio station and was asked to sit on the Cameron County Chamber of Commerce Executive Board. After she'd been there for a while, they were searching for an executive director, and she was hired as the executive director. And this is the smallest county in Pennsylvania, which she is in charge of their Chamber of Commerce. One of her first tasks as the executive director was to work with Pennsylvania Wilds to create an artisan trail. And of the 12 counties that are part of Pennsylvania Wilds, or PA Wilds, Cameron County was the only one without a stop on the Artisan Trail. So, very quickly, Tina secured a location, and starting with only 10 artists selling work, they have quickly grown to over 60 artists offering classes and averaging sales over $21,000. So, she has a great track record, as you can see. And this evening, she is going to share information about the program of PA Wilds and tell us more about what it is. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us here. My husband Gary's with me. As was said, I moved from the center part of the state into the heart of the PA Wilds, literally. And we used to joke when we would go somewhere in Pennsylvania and see these weird signs that say, "Welcome to the PA Wilds." And we, the kids would be in the car and they'd be going, "Yeah, we're in the wilds." And then I wind up living in the middle of it and being instrumental in it. So it's really strange how, you just never say never. I'm going to start by showing you a presentation that's on YouTube, so anybody can find it, and it's a really good synopsis of the PA Wilds, what it is, what it strives to do, and then I'll get a little more in depth on exactly what I do, and at any time, please just ask questions. It's really informal, so we'll just get the. That's good.
That's our program in a nutshell. Literally, the whole initiative began. Let me see if I can get this out. The whole initiative began with an idea that north of Interstate 80, which basically is the PA Wilds, if you're familiar with Pennsylvania, so it extends through the middle of the state to the New York border, was really suffering economically. I mean, dramatically. The manufacturing was leaving, population's down, but the former governor came to our region and said, oh my gosh, I'm from Philadelphia, this is gorgeous, there's mountain biking here, why aren't we developing it more? And through Ed Rendell's ideas, the PA Wilds started in 2005. So from 2005 to today, we now have a presence in all of the counties. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was difficult getting some of the counties to buy in. And all they had to do was say, yes, we support this program and we'll give you $1,000. That's all we asked for, but it was like pulling teeth with a few of them. Now 12.5 counties have all bought into the program, and we're really seeing some major improvements. One of the slides that was shown was the Elk Country Visitor Center, which is in Benezet, Pennsylvania, a town of 400 people, and they had 82,000 visitors. So you talk about
having some difficulty in making sure, do you build it and they come, or do you make sure you have hotels and a sewer system before you do it? So it's something that it's continuing to evolve. More and more places are looking at Benezet and saying, oh my gosh, we need, we need to grow this place. And I think they've had 6 new businesses come into that community since the Elk Country Visitor Center opened just 3 years ago. So as far as my own personal piece of this, let's see, technology is not my favorite. I went out of this totally. Escape? All right. Yeah, bring. Okay, and then we come over here to get that guy. Okay, all right. So literally, Cameron County sits in the very middle of this 12.5 county area. We have a population of 5,000 people in the entire county. The town of Emporium is the county seat, and there's approximately 2,000 people that live there. So if you have a small hamlet, it can be done. And I'm not saying we did it by ourselves. It took a whole lot of cooperation. First of all, when I arrived and became the chamber director, that's where the office was, where that little mailbox is, that little door. That's where our presence was, downtown in Emporium, in a back alley. And one of the first things that the board said was, we need to move. And there were lots of vacant storefronts downtown. In fact, we had a building that was gutted by fire, and the owner said, you can have it. You can just renovate it and put the chamber there. We had a building that was in major disrepair, but was part of a foundation, and they said, we'll give you the money to buy the building and to renovate it. Or we had a storefront that had just gone empty, and the chamber board did not want to be a landlord, they wanted to rent. So this is where we now are. Where we are now, we have a storefront that we were like, well, what are we going to do with a storefront? We're just a chamber office. And we had a gentleman in town who does amazing artwork that came to me and said, I would love to sell my artwork, but I'm not going to man a store. I'm retired. I just like to do artwork. And he said, I'll pay you. I'll give you a fee if you sell my artwork. And I said, you find me other people that will do that, and we'll consider this. At the same time, the Artisan Trail was getting underway. And the director of that happened to be giving this presentation and saying, well, Cameron County, there's nothing there. They won't have, they won't be a stop on the trail. And he didn't realize I was in the room, and that was in April. We opened in July with 10 artists. Boy, that was a chore, making it look like the place was full with just 10 artists. And we opened in July with 10 artists. Today we have over 60. So some building blocks to success. I always look at what works in the community. We have a very successful canoe and kayak classic race that happens every April. We get approximately 200 participants, 100 vessels that go down our stream. And the person that runs it said, well, we need something else for our people to do when they come here. So we developed a program called Hike Cameron County. And in this photo, these are Woodsman of the World monuments. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was an insurance company that when you died, they would give you your tombstone. And that is not wood, that is a tombstone from the early 1900s with amazing artwork on it. And we have about 6 in the county, so we took a hike to that. Obviously, with the name Wilds, our Christmas event is going to be called Christmas in the Wilds. Our art event is called Weekend in the Wilds. I mean, it just makes sense if you've got a branding that works, take off with it. And we aren't saying PA Wilds, so we didn't have to get DCNR approval. We're just saying Wilds, so we can run with it. We can do shirts. We can do anything we want. Think outside the box. We have a group of volunteers called Mountaineer Search and Rescue, and they go out and they're getting very busy this time of the year because hunting season, people get lost, fishing season, And they literally go out with tracking dogs and help find lost people. They needed to raise money. So during our event, which is Weekend in the Wilds, we do a Bigfoot hunt. And people go out and look for these 4-foot-high cutouts of a foot with the toenails painted. They pay $5 a license to do it. And we had over 60 participants last year. It was their 3rd year. And there were only 12 of them. They bring them back, and our businesses bring in donations of either a product or cash, and we give away the prizes then for the people. And it's become a real draw for people. When are they bringing in the feet? We want to see them. We actually hid one in the chamber window. So I got there at 7 o'clock in the morning to help set things up. And I came in the back door, and I came to the front door, and there were 3 people standing at the door. And I thought, oh my gosh, what happened? And they were like, it's my foot, I saw it first, I was here first. They were fighting over it because they drove by and saw it in the window and wanted to claim it as theirs. I told you that we are super small. Our main drag is a state road that is 2 lanes wide. We actually brought a Macy's-style balloon in for our Christmas parade. He was 4 stories high. Our tallest building is 3 stories high. He took up the entire route of the parade, which the parade consists of a high school band, the fire trucks, the Girl Scouts, and maybe a vehicle or 2 of maybe if the county commissioners want to come. That's it. And then this big honking balloon. It was, I mean, we had like 3,000 people just downtown. And whenever we do an event, it's on our downtown Main Street. We get criticized by that, I'm not gonna lie to you. You know, the businesses that are on 2nd Street or on 3rd Street, you know, why? You know, we say to them, we will give you a spot on the main drag. You can bring a table and sell your items. We will encourage people with a map to go see you, have something special at your business to attract people into it. But for logistics, it just makes sense to do it right down the main street, and then hopefully people will go into the businesses and buy from them. I mean, that's all part of it whenever you have any of these events. So this is the inside of the chamber. I told you we now have 60 artists. They range everything from $2, congratulations on your first buck that you shot type postcard that's hand-drawn, all the way to $900 paintings. We run the gamut. You know, the first year, our first total year of being open, we did $18,000. Our 2nd year, we did $22,000. Our 3rd year, we did $27,000. This year, we're hoping to do 20. And I can't explain the downfall. I don't know. All I know is that our hotel revenues are down. The entire region just hasn't had, and I do know still Cameron County, St. Mary's, Elk County, powdered metal is still a major manufacturer there. So when the car industry has trouble, when the economy's down, our plants are down. So I do recognize that, but I would have thought that it would have, you know, that we would have been rebounding because a lot of people are working, but I have this theory that a lot of people are just hanging on to their money too. They aren't coming in and buying for themselves. We are seeing a definite increase the last 2 months of people starting their Christmas shopping. So we're hopeful we're going to get real busy. Listen and respond in your community to the needs. That gentleman is the artist that came to me and said, Tina, I'll pay you. We now have taken over the fireworks for the community, which is held during Weekend in the Wilds, because the firework committee consisted of 3 people. They were all over the age of 65. They were exhausted and tired of trying to raise $7,000 every year. So the chamber said, okay, we're going to take it on. One of the first things we're going to institute is we're going to have breakfast with the Easter Bunny. Bring in money that way. Cooperation is so key from your Little League, from your Rotary, from the artisans, from the county government. We recently opened a $3 million visitor center in, it's about a 20-minute drive from Emporium to where the visitor center is. And the director there, it's a state park visitor center, we are collaborating on, she comes up, looks at the artwork, she takes it down there, and she sells it down there, and then the commissions still come back up to the Artisan Center and the artists. So anywhere you can look to cooperate, that's one of the biggest keys. And then you get great success stories. The gentleman in the far corner, David Castano from Potter County, he carves everything from miners to Civil War soldiers. And one of our state senators happened to be in the visitor center, or in the chamber office, and said, I want to place an order. And I said, okay. And he said, for Christmas, and this was like in June, I want to give every Senate member one of his wooden things. It was like a $1,500 order for him. And, you know, obviously then the chamber benefits too. We also held in 2010 our sesquicentennial for the county. We had an amazing turnout for a parade on a day when it rained the entire day. And sometimes it rained heavy and sometimes it rained light. But that was a big parade. That one actually was a 1.5 miles long, like complete. Like the start of the parade to the end of the parade was a total 1.5 miles. So that was a whole lot better than the Christmas parade that's like half a block long. And our art classes are booming. When I left today, we were just finishing up, we have a program called Artisan Residence, and I got a phone call from Erie saying, we haven't done a program in Cameron County in like 5 years. Are you interested? And I said, well, sure, what's it involve? Well, we'll send you an artist. You guys do something with her. Okay, 16 days. Okay. What's it going to cost? Well, we'll work that out. And then somebody called back and said $500. I said, okay, I can come up with $500. Then they called back and said, oh no, now we need 1,000. And I said, we've got 500. That's it. That's what you told me. And they were so desperate to put that they were serving Cameron County so that they would get their funding from the state and the federal government, that they did it. And she has brought in, we dyed 300 silk scarves. Like, we had 4 classes of it, at least 30 or 40 people coming in, dyeing these scarves, 10 scarves at a time. $2.50 is all that we charged for the class. She just did a watercolor class for $5. I mean, it was something that we could offer extremely affordable, but because of that, we have 3 more classes coming up from local, not artisans, but more of the craft type, making a wreath, making Christmas cards. So it's actually growing in that regard too. Our, you know, it's not just the artists that are making $20,000 on average a year. We're getting 20% of that, plus we're getting their $50 a year fee. It has enabled the chamber to get out there and do more programs. It has enabled us to offer, grow the Christmas in the Wilds event. We now bring live reindeer in. Never had that happen before. We now bring in different, write different grants for different organizations. On the social media side, we're trying to get our businesses to realize the importance of websites, to realize the importance of Facebook, to realize the importance of Twitter. And so the chamber, because we have a staff, I'm supposed to work 30 hours a week. And then we have a girl that works 20 hours over a 2-week period. So her hours are very limited. But we are able to keep a presence. I mean, we're open 10 to 4 every day. On Saturday, we're open 9 to 1. We're not open on Sunday. We don't have the big tourist draw as much as like over in Benezet would with the elk. But we're trying to grow that too, because we have more trails in our county than any of the other surrounding counties. But the problem is, here's our town, but the trailhead is, you know, 30 minutes away. So how do you get them from there into your downtown. So we're working really close with DCNR, doing a lot of unique signing programs, letting them know that if you want gas or diesel, the only place you're going to get it is in Emporium, because nowhere else in the county do they sell it. We do not have, our big box store is Rite Aid. That's our chain store. We have 2 gas stations, and everything else, all of our restaurants, our hotels, everything else is all locally owned and operated. So I think that I can really relate just on the drive-in that this area is also very much the same. It's not like you can get to a mall just by going down the street and you're there. It's hard, it's hard to attract young professionals to come back, although we're starting to do that through the Artisan program, hooking up young artists and young professionals and getting them together on a monthly basis, rotating them around the 12 counties, just so that they can sit and talk to somebody that's in their 20s versus somebody that's in their 50s. You know, they just want to know that, yeah, I came back to the community and people are saying, why did you come back here? You know, and so a whole lot of just, I think, similar situations that your region shares and also the PA WILDS share. But the nice thing is, when you hear Catskills, I immediately, not being from the area, thought of skiing, thought of mountains, thought of outdoor recreation. Your branding's there. You know, I did bring, we have, you know, our PA WILDS logo that they trademarked. Anybody can use it, you just have to. DCNR wants to know what you're putting it on. And I ran into a run-in with them because I wanted to put them on our bags that somebody buys something and they walk out the door with it. Well, they didn't want to see bags littered on the highway with PA WILDS on it, so they nixed the idea. But they also did a great thing called the PA WILDS Design Guide. And I know in our community, we have issues with properties that are not maintained. And we have issues with elected officials that don't want to enforce it because they may know the person. It may be, you know, sideways through marriage or whatever. But they've come up with this great design guide that shows just some good ideas on signage, so that the signs are all kind of similar. Also, if you have like a new grocery store coming in town and it's a chain store, great examples in here of actual McDonald's. It doesn't look anything like a McDonald's. It's in a historic home. It doesn't have the big M. It doesn't, and how you go about approaching the corporate world and encourage them to kind of blend in your community. Because honestly, when we were driving in, we were like, oh, that town looks really nice. We got to stop there on the way back. Versus, you know, other towns that you just drive through and go, okay, nothing caught our eye. It wasn't, you know, there weren't businesses that we would stop at, and that's what you want to attract. Even though, you know, it costs money, and it's locally owned businesses have it tough right now. They have a lot on their plate to deal with, and then you want them to worry about what the outside of their building looks like. PA WILDS managed to get some money out of the state government, and they offered where if you were a business and you wanted a new sign, you would pay half and they would pay half. So they did a lot of sign improvements in a lot of the downtowns. They also did the welcome to signs, you know, welcome to Emporium, welcome to Sheffield. That was a complete freebie. They just came up with design standards. This is how the sign has to look. You can't just, you know, put bright neon and flashing lights on it. So they came up with a design guide, which is wonderful. They also, they're moving away from these brochures that we've all seen that are like, oh, come, you know, we've got all this information and it costs us $5,000 to print these things. to using the rack cards that are just real simple, front and back, using Facebook, using QR codes that people can scan with their phones, and it takes them right to the website. And all of this is free. I mean, Facebook is free. I just went through, I don't know if I can bring it up, I just went through and created a brand new website for the chamber, and it's called wix.com, and it is free. And it is the simplest thing I have ever done in my life. It was cut and paste, and within, I think within a week, or maybe 2 weeks, we had it up and running. It was, I mean, we even blew ourselves away that we could manage to do that quick. But our website, I should have kept it so that I could show people what it looked like, how hideous it really was. I mean, I had people calling me and saying, your webpage, is that marijuana in the background? Because it was all trees. And everybody was like, what's in your background? And I'm like, oh no, oh, well, hey, we came up, that's good, on Google. But this is like the most simplest thing. It wasn't any HTML coding. This part up here, you can put in, and then you can say, I want that to appear on every page. We've got, finally, we have a real, we have a real business directory that lists all of our, I don't know why it's asking me to, oh, because I'm hitting the wrong button, that's why. We have a real business directory by automotive, by clubs and organizations, contracting. Our webpage before used to be alphabetical for the businesses, and then it would say, this business employs 5 people. They started in 1953, and here's their phone number. And it was like, really, if you don't know the business, how are you ever going to find them? So we totally redid that. We have a whole section on just the artists. We have, we even put in here support Cameron County, because we have a situation where we have 4,000 homes, but we have 8,000 camps, cottages, cabins, whatever name you want to put to them. We have a large population of people that come from Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Ohio, and we were the birthplace of Sylvania and the electronic, the light bulb, and so we had people that worked there that were dispersed all across the United States and overseas, and they still connect back to Cameron County. So we put a page up there, this is how, the library's having their big Merry Christmas to family and friends. Here's the form, it's $5, make a donation to Cameron County if you want. But if anybody has that site was just, you just import your pictures. It's like working on a Word document, and it was free, and it's free to host it. Wix.com. And anytime I had questions asking, I would call and I would get an American, and they would know what they were talking about, and they would fix it, and talk me through it. It just, I can't say enough about. In fact, I had the grocery store in town come in on Monday, and we worked for 2 hours coming up with, what should she put across the top, and how do you do it? And she was so excited, it was almost like addicting once you get on there and you start playing with it and seeing. And they had thousands of templates. So, yeah.
So let's go back to PA WILDS for a minute. So
Yep.
you've got 12.5 counties.
Yes.
They're all following the same design guide, so you have a uniform brand. So, for example, this website follows a design guide that was given to you by PA WILDS.
Design guide does not address websites. But yes, the communities are slowly, each community is adopting the design guide, so that when you go in, you're seeing more uniform in the town. Like in downtown Ridgeway, they're doing awnings. Almost all their buildings now have awnings, and they have a facade improvement. You go into, over into Warren, and they're starting with the painting of the buildings and the upstairs, you know, the second and third floors, taking care of those. So it's up to each community to adopt the design guide, but we're seeing more and more throughout the 12.5 county area where people are adopting it. And they can adopt it in full or in part. And I have copies so you guys can take them with you. They're DVDs.
So where are you with adoption then? So for the 12.5 counties, would you
I'd
say you're
say-
at 30% or?
I'd say probably they're at about maybe close to 50%.
50?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's more getting your community to and your business, because it focuses just on your business district. It doesn't focus on your houses, or if you're going to develop you know, a piece of land and put a housing tract on it. It's talking about your downtown and how your downtown should look. And it's broad enough that you can adapt it to any community. So it's not like, oh, we all have to use that brown and rust and, you know, we all have to use those colors. No, but it is very specific because we have in the 12 county area one of the darkest skies in the eastern United States, and we have an astronomy station there. All the lighting is down lighting. So you wouldn't, you would put a sign, you'd put a light up that would light the sign from down instead of up light. Very few, they're even starting to do that with some of the larger American flags. We have Marcellus drilling in our region. The drillers have even adopted where they will not flare at night, and they will not do 24/7 operation in the PA wilds, because of keeping that dark sky aspect and not putting a lot of light pollution up. So again, that all came from the PA wilds. If we didn't have that, you know, just another.
When you say it came from the PA Wilds, does that mean
The
like
initiative.
you, all the so who was the initiative?
Okay, the PA Wilds was made up of, there's a planning team that has representatives from all of the 12.5 counties. And they come together every other month. Out of that core group, they have a marketing board that is doing, taking most of the tourist promotion agency money for the 12.5 counties and producing publications. Also, they're in charge of the website, their own website, the PA Wilds website. We have the business side, which is Ta Brandt, and she is paid staff, and she is a go-between between the businesses and the actual planning team and the state. There is a state representative from DCNR, Meredith Hill. She's obviously paid, but through DCNR. And then the Artisan Trail is all run by another board, a steering committee, and they're all volunteers. Although there's been a lot of talk about trying to write a grant and actually get that position funded, because it is just taking off. I mean, 12.5 counties, they have 25 trail locations now, and over 140 artists that are now juried in to the process. So they've submitted their artwork, it's been accepted, they get a special tag that they can put on their artwork.
So for a community that's considering their option of buying into this brand, what are the carrots and what are the sticks?
I want to say that it's very, you know, you buy into it, you're buying into DCNR that has a whole lot of power, you're buying into a power base that has some funding that controls, we have programs in Pennsylvania called Main Street programs, where communities can apply and get a lot of money for it and do facade improvements. So it is that plus the pride, plus the community spirit that you get out of it. Just everybody working together. It's not, you're not guaranteed money when you adopt a design guide. You're not guaranteed any funding whatsoever.
Do you know the source of the funding?
The source of the funding is for the Artisan Trail, and for some of the startup of the PA Wilds planning team, that came from an ARC grant, Appalachian Region Commission, federal funding for the for Ta's position and for Meredith Hill's position, that comes straight from DCNR and DCED, which is our conservation and our economic development in Pennsylvania. So that's state, but we had a mix of state and federal funds to get everything going.
So you said that your county has more trails than some of the others. Whose responsibility is it in that situation to promote the use of the trails? Is it
Well, DCNR and the state park system promote the trails a lot, just through, and forestry, because they're the ones that maintain it. They're the ones that developed it, they're the ones that maintain it. But it's not their job to get them from the trail into the town. And that's where the chamber and the PA Wilds are stepping in and using. At a lot of their trailheads, they'll have kiosks where you can put maps, you can put brochures. We have wonderful signs that are, tried to bring a picture of one. It's more like a tabletop sign, but it would be kind of on an angle so that you could see it. Laminate. They'll have those at the trailheads, and so we're working with them to design them that will actually say, you know, Emporium this direction, Cinema Honing that direction, Driftwood, so that people know that there are actual communities when you're in the PAY. I mean, you could go to some of our locations and not see a single soul or see another car for an hour on the road. And they don't realize that, oh my gosh, there's a town 10 miles up. And our cell service is horrendous. I mean, it's almost non-existent.
And in defense of DCNR, because, you know, Tina's only lived in where we live since 2000, and I've lived there since 94. DCNR, since PA Wilds, they have become much more sign-oriented. Because until the PA Wilds was started, that in particular initiative, you would have no clue where the trails were.
And honestly, you know, it was the governor coming and saying, we're going to put money behind this. You know, and because without money, you can't do it. And without the state backing, you know, there was no way these 12 and a half counties were going to sit down around the table together and come up with branding. It had to come from, you know, a statewide organization. And originally they were looking at tourist promotion areas. So, okay, you have Philadelphia and the history, you have Erie and the lake and all of that. You have you have Williamsport with Little League, you have this vast center part. What can we call it? What can we do with it? And that's where they came up with the PA Wilds, and it was economic.
And previous to the PA Wilds, it was called the Magic Forest Tourism Promotion Agency. And this Magic Forest Tourist Promotion Agency had no clue there was a place above I-80.
Yeah, it was all just like the center of the state. The other aspect is when there was a lot of money, because I'm sure New York is like Pennsylvania, each county used to get $100,000 for tourist promotion out of this initiative that the governor said, we need, at the very beginning, we need to put money behind this. Now money has dried up, and we have a hotel tax now, and that's supposed to fund us. Unfortunately, when you're in a place like the PA Wilds, you don't have huge hotels and big people, their capacity all the time. I mean, in Cameron County, we have 3 hotels, and they're like 20. I think the largest is 34 rooms.
And
that's not going to generate enough money.
And the 3 hotels, majority of them with our Marcellus Shale taking over our area so much, they're taken up.
Yeah. And then you run into an issue because the state of Pennsylvania has a law that if you rent a room for more than 30 days, you do not have to pay the hotel tax. And I don't know if that's similar in New York.
It's other states have, in New Jersey, I think it's 90 days.
Yeah. And so that with the Marcellus drilling has really, I mean, and that was set up because of the large airports. For the people flying in and out of Pittsburgh and Philly, the corporate wanted to have a room available if there was a delay, but they didn't want to have to pay all that GE and other places didn't want to have to pay the big tax, but now the center part of the state is suffering because of that rule, because of the drilling, so.
So Cameron County adopted this how long ago?
Actually, the initiative started in 2007. Cameron County bought into it in 2009. The chamber was already up and using it in 2008. And I think that I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot of resistance. There were council people that were like, oh, the state's trying to come in and tell us how to do things. And we're not gonna have them tell us, and manufacturing brings in better paying jobs than tourists. And the PA Wilds was trying to show people, and still try to show people, that there can be a mix of both. It doesn't have to be all tourism, it doesn't have to be all manufacturing. But at the present time, when the PA Wilds was started, nobody was using tourism in those 12 and a half counties. Nobody was tapping into that dollar. And so that was a lot of the start of it, was let's get money into that region, and how can we do it? Let's use our natural resources and let's do tourism. So the brand was created. Signage is all along Interstate 80 and the major highways. Once you enter a PA Wilds area, there is a sign along the highway that says PA Wilds.
How do you document if it's working? So you've been in it for 4 years. And can you track growth in tourism expenditures?
They are tracking growth by using their hits on their website. They do now have bus tours that are coming into some of the areas, which they've never had before. I mean, they can see a definite growth. How do you track tourism dollars over a long period is something that definitely struggling with. Because, okay, you have 5 bus tours. Okay, you have 5 bus tours the next year. I mean, state parks, we have a ton of state parks in the PA Wilds area, so they are tracking their usage and their frequency of visitors. So they're using that number also. And that number, especially when the economy went really bad before gas prices went crazy, was on a steep spike. I mean, people were coming and going to state parks and camping rather than going on big vacation destinations. Honestly, now it's more at a leveling, but still at that peak level, but it's leveled off. They're not seeing those big spikes anymore.
Question. Early on in your slide presentation, I saw a very attractive, I think it was a lawn building with elk or deer in the front yard.
That is the Elk Visitor Center, which is in Benezet. That was a $7 million project.
Okay, that's my question. Where'd you get the money from?
Okay. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation in Colorado decided they were going to reintroduce elk to Pennsylvania. And they picked that spot because it was so remote. And they did it back in I think it was back in the early 50s. Rocky Mountain Elk slowly kept the foundation buying more and more property and putting more and more feed plots in. And eventually got the Pennsylvania Game Commission to realize the value in it. Rocky Mountain Elk was going to build that center. And when the design was finished, all of a sudden Rocky Mountain Elk pulled all their money and said, no, forget it. We're not doing it. DCNR picked it up. So it is a visitor center. It's not a state park, but it is considered a DCNR visitor center that is funded. The operation cost is totally funded by the revenue that they bring in. They have a program that they charge like a movie, like a 3D type movie. They have concessions that they sell there. And so they have to, between that and private donations, keep the doors open. But the actual money for the center came from the state.
And it's not just about the elk, though, so it's like a visitor center. that
It is a visitor
tells
center.
your story,
Yes.
places to go in the counties.
Yep.
And the photo that you did see with the guests that were there, and those were.
Yeah, that's very normal.
That's-
Yeah.
Now, where is this center located in reference to your PA Wild
It's
area?
more in the western part, but not very far. Like Cameron County is dead center, the visitor center, the elk is down in this area. Yeah, so it's not, you know, it's about a 30-minute drive from Emporium to get to them, but it's in a different county. But, you know, like I said, the state, I mean, they built another visitor center in Cameron County in a place called Cinnamahoning at a state park. That was a $2 million project. It's open, but they don't have their displays yet. That's supposed to come this spring. They built another one in the far eastern end of the PA Wilds that's all about birding. So they're making these visitor centers very specific to what you can do in a certain area. And again, it's all funded by the state.
No, DCNR acronym.
Is Department of Conservation Natural Resources. And they are not, they're not part of the general fund in Pennsylvania's budget. They are a specific line item. So they
They're not
are,
Fish and Game Commission.
no, Fish and Game is completely different. Yeah. In fact, it's game, and then it's fish and boat.
And the Fish and Game Commission in our state comes under the Department of Environmental Protection, don't they?
No.
No?
No, they're totally on
It's a
their
total-
own.
okay.
In fact, they don't get any money from the state. They are totally funded by the licenses that they take in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And DCED is Department of Community Economic Development. So again, it was a partnership realizing if you get the tourism, if you get the people coming into the community, your local businesses will thrive and your local businesses will grow. Another big initiative through the PA Wilds are Rails to Trails. Number of our railroad lines that are out, they have funded those through the PA Wilds to get those resurfaced. And in Pennsylvania, they don't turn that land over to a trail authority or to the property owners. It's rail banked. So at any time, the railroad can come back in and put those tracks back in. But DCNR has felt that that's a pretty important, vital way to get some of the money into the communities, because most of those trail lines eventually go through a center of town. So, and they're working on one in our area right now. I think they got like $700,000 for it, for a 3-mile section, that they're hoping to get the funds released that they can actually start the work. So that will help Cameron County a lot. Once we get that rail section, because then we can really ramp up a lot of the local businesses. I talked about Benezet. It's trying to get those local businesses to see in the future of what might happen and to get them to invest in what might happen. Start carrying bicycles. Put an air pump out. Put in your restaurant a cubby hole where motorcyclists and snowmobilers can put their helmets and gear so that it's not sitting at the table when they're eating. Simple things like that we think are simple, that businesses just go, you want me to what? On top of every, so it's really that education piece, and they want to see the trail people coming in before they're willing to do it. So PA Wilds has had quite a job to try to smooth a lot of those rough edges out, but it is definitely moving in the right, despite the lack of funding. You know, the planning team is still together. They put on roughly 2 seminars a year. The last seminar, this year they had a trail conference seminar where they talked about maintaining rails to trails and how do you do a rails to trails. That seminar was held in Bradford, and I think they had 60 people actually participate in it from all 12 and a half counties. Then they just put on a conference last week in St. Mary's, which is Elk County, where they opened it up and they charged $200 for teams to come in. And so one of the teams was Gailton, which is a very small community, but they're 11 miles from that dark sky place that I talked about. So it was their tourist promotion director, it was their mayor, it was some concerned citizens, and they spent 2 days going through some processes and seminar information and workshops, and then came together with a plan that they're going to go back and try to institute in their community. You know, these are our goals. This is how we think we can get there. This is a timeline to get there. I mean, a complete package. And they had 9 groups from throughout the PA Wilds. Everything from, we want to do an endurance trail run, a group that wanted to do that, to a whole county that wanted to try to improve its image. So it was all different groups that came in, and they worked together as a group and left with a complete package. So they do those types of seminars too.
How do you get a half a county? You know,
Oh, well, it's actually State College, which is Center County. So south, you know, when the governor was looking at economically distressed areas, Penn State is not an economically distressed area in the state of Pennsylvania. So they took the northern part of it, which really is, and then the southern part is not part of it. So that's how we get the 12 and a half.
just curiosity.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
My dad went to Penn State, so that's fun.
there you go, there you go.
That's just,
They started with these heritage regions in Pennsylvania. And so they looked at a lumber heritage region, which was actually 16 counties. Where did a lot of the lumber way back when come from? And then when they were looking at the PA Wilds, they drew it out of that 16 county area. So you can kind of say maybe the lumber heritage started the PA Wilds, but it all, when they were looking at breaking the state into regions, I mean, Pennsylvania's really becoming major regionalized, from police departments to fire departments to school districts. In fact, our county, they talked about regionalizing it and doing away with all the local governments, but that didn't, they talked about it for about 1.5 years, and then it just died because it was such a hot button topic. But Pennsylvania really likes to regionalize, and that was the way to do it.
So the incentive here to move this forward has been state funding. You know, this is something that we've
Yes.
talked about in the Catskills for a long time in terms of, can we get kind of more of a unified identity as a region rather than have 4 or 5 counties all doing their own separate thing. And actually beyond that, we get into towns and villages and hamlets doing their own thing. And you know, I'm not sure we have a consensus that we have as positive an image as you started with. I think some people think about a Borscht Belt that no longer exists as their image of the Catskills. So if we were going to brand, I mean, put it in context for us, how much state funding in the 4 or 5 years that this has been in operation, how much did it take to get that level of cooperation?
If you're going to count the visitor centers in there,
No, leave those out.
okay, leave those out, just the basic funding
For the branding, basically.
for the branding on the state side,
Yeah.
about, I'm going to say it was about 50,000 a year. It's not that much. When you look at a state budget, it's not that much. How all that got done was a lot of volunteers that really believed in it in that planning team that met for free. You know, they come together, they meet, they volunteered, they broke themselves. And the planning team, primarily the representatives from each county were the county planners. So that, you know, it came from planning departments. So they're used to looking at exactly what the PA Wilds was looking at branding. You know, when I heard Catskills, immediately I thought of, you know.
That's why we both look forward, that's why I came with her, we both look forward just to coming here.
I guess
So
you don't realize.
Is the
it's happening.
mystique gone, is that what you're saying? Or there's
You're
not.
not seeing the return as much as before?
He's saying it's not homogeneous.
Oh,
It's-
to make it more uniform with the brand.
I don't believe it's homogeneous.
But the jet,
Well, but you know what's happening right now from a promotion standpoint is we have I Love New York. We have the Great Northern Catskills. We have the Western Catskills. I forget what Sullivan County are calling themselves. So we have a group
Yeah.
a group that have gone off on their own. But I do think you have to realize where you're drawing from for the Catskills.
Right.
I think we're drawing, you know, our target would be the 25 million urban people to the southeast of us.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And I think those people have associated the Catskills with some really big resorts that we don't have anymore. And towards the end of that period, they were in decline.
Okay.
And so I think we did lose a little bit of our edge
Mhm.
as you know, in terms of if you compare it to what we are now, which is we now have between 500,000 and 600,000 acres of public land, but we're a little bit asleep at the switch in terms of the visitation of that is flat. If you looked at the trailhead data for 10 years in the Catskills in terms of who's visiting those trails, the trailhead data is flat for 10 years.
Okay.
So we're whether we've lost our mystique, we're definitely a little stale. And the question is,
Okay.
you know, can we reestablish an image of the Catskills based on what we are now, not based on what people thought we were?
Exactly.
Well, as an outside observer, because basically, you know, yeah, obviously Tina and I are married, but and all I am in the scheme of things is the operations manager of the local radio station. But having lived in that area really since 1988, the PA Wilds certainly has made more people aware of what you're talking about, trails, whether that, I mean, obviously that was their intention, and I can officially say as an outside observer, I think they've succeeded.
They've pumped a lot of money into, you know, DCNR into fixing up their state parks, into and they're in charge of the trails and the state of the land. So yeah, they made a real conscientious effort.
Because
to do it.
until that initiative started, and it just wasn't because of my wife and I getting together, because I've always wanted to go walk trails and things like that. I just never knew where to go. But now I do know where to go because of what they're doing.
Yeah, and they're mapping, and they have, you know, the app on the phone, and yeah, they have really, and the other thing is the marketing. When they started marketing the PA Wilds, when they were getting the money for the, you know, the marketing corporations, for all the individual tourist promotion agencies, they talked individually, and they went in national magazines. They went to the Pittsburgh market, to the Philadelphia market. I don't think they went into New York City at all, but they really saturated Washington, D.C. because of the Great Allegheny Passageway, which takes you from D.C. to Pittsburgh. So those people are already on bikes, walking, get them to make the next step and see, you know, more remote trails. And, you know, some of those ads you saw, they were very unique. You know, the guy riding the bike with the elk antlers on his head, you know, just really thinking outside the box. And they spent a lot of money that first year. All the tourist promotion agencies pooling their money and buying into it, that we're going to really market this hard. And I really think that has had a great effect. And then you open a visitor center, so people are coming up for that. I don't know personally how much return visit there will be to the Bethesda area because of the lack of some of the amenities like you talked about. We don't have the fancy, you know, fancy hotels and self-service that people want to have. But then we have that group of population that's coming in that's saying, thank heavens, I wanted to go someplace where nobody could reach me. And I finally found it. You know, I found where I can totally disconnect, and I can do it here. So, you know, you got to play the card when you have it both ways.
Because there has been, I don't know if it shows statistically, but there has been more camping in our area.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, obviously, you know, being here in Catskills, America's first wilderness, we did lose some of what we were all about initially, the land of Rip Van Winkle, or the Hudson River School of Art, the first school of art in this country. they came up from New York City in the 1820s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Or in my case, Dirty Dancing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what,
That goes-
that's the
that
Catskill.
goes back to the
That's the
Borscht
Borscht
Belt.
Belt.
Yeah, the worst, exactly, thank you, sir.
We're sitting in a private club that's part of Windham Mountain right now that people pay a fairly large sum of money as a equity position, if you will, to have, you know, have a little more privacy than being with the general public on the other side of the wall. All of that aside, my question is, you mentioned camps before, you know, and I don't think you have the ski areas.
No.
You know, you don't
No.
have some of the other recreational opportunities that we have here. But are these camps more like, you know, the hunting camp, the fishing camp? Or do you have, my real question, do you have second homes? Do you have a,
What we are seeing, first of all, we have camps that range from God-forsaken, ugly things with the outhouse, to plush, beautiful second homes. So we run the gamut. What we are seeing in the last 3 or 4 years, we are seeing the family camps being sold. You know, I've come up here and hunted for 40 years with my grandfather, but my kids aren't interested in hunting anymore. I'm getting rid of it. The people that are buying it for a second home and putting $100,000 into it. And their plan is, we're retiring and we're coming up here and living. I'm hearing that on a daily basis. Still, even with the housing market the way it is, first of all, housing's really cheap in Cameron County, so you can pick up a camp for $6,000, $7,000. But I'm hearing that all the time, that people want to come back to very secluded areas. But we run the gamut. I mean, we run postage stamp. You know, my thought is, if you're going to have a camp or a cabin in the woods, why would you be right next to your neighbor? I mean, there's a part of Mahoning that's really popular for fishing, and literally, it's like a housing project. I'm like, why are you, you know, just unbelievable to me, but I don't know, I guess they're comfortable that way. It gives them the feeling of the city where they're from. But, you know, but again, we have, the problem with Cameron County, one of our problems though, is that 67% of the land is owned by the state. It's either forestry, game commission, or DCNR lands. So our growth is really limited. I mean, we're not going to have the next savior manufacturer come in. So we have to capitalize on those public lands and what the state's willing to put into them, and get those people to buy those camps to come up here to make it year-round living.
Well, I mean, and that's why we're interested in the PA Wilds example, because we have some towns that are 80% owned by the state,
Yeah.
and the ownership is Forever Wild.
Yep.
And then on top of that, we have the New York City watershed, which between the two of those, you can be reasonably confident that you're not going to bring in a lot of heavy industry.
Right.
So our foundation has to be based to some extent on being better at tourism.
Yes.
And so I look at tourism as a very competitive thing in terms of, you know, where, you know, in this case, we have a perception that a lot of our tourism dollars are staying on the thruway and headed north. And they're either going to Vermont or the Adirondacks, but they're driving by a fairly spectacular place, except for we didn't tell them.
Right.
And so that's the part that I think we're missing. And so, you know, we look at this example of 12 and a half counties getting together and generally agreeing on developing a uniform brand.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, you know, that doesn't work in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. The question is over time, can you prove that through that cooperation and that branding that you actually accomplished your objectives?
From the Artisan Center trail, the Artisan Trail is an easy way to track that, much easier, because they were locations either they didn't exist or they were existing shops that now are focusing on art. And there was a survey done 3 years after the initiative started, and in all of those cases, the existing stores saw 20 to 30% increase in sales. And they didn't change anything other than they started selling artwork from artists that had a hang tag on it that said made in the PA Wilds. That was it. And a lot of them are, most of the artwork is done on consignment. So the shops aren't putting out the money first to have that as inventory. They're taking it on as consignment, and then for 20%, they're keeping 20% in their pocket. Or some places are upwards of 30 or 40%, and the artists are fine with that. So that part, yes, you can, and again, they're in those smaller towns. So is it that the people never stopped there before? We don't have that number before to compare it to, but we know that within 3 years of it opening, all those businesses that were part of that trail also saw a substantial increase.
I mean, and the other parallels from my perspective, we went through a period of time, Joe, you might have been involved, went through a period of time where we had heavy discussion about reintroducing elk into the Catskills, and it turned into one of those classic Catskills debates, and when we didn't agree on it, and it didn't happen. We've also had 25 years of discussion about visitor centers. We haven't built any. So,
Yeah. I mean, the visitor centers, the one that's in the Center County area that's all about birding is at a location where it's on the migratory trail for a lot of the birds. There's natural water there, and what they did was they took it a step further, which gets a little dicey in my mind. They not only have a visitor center, but they have an inn associated with it. Now, I have a hard time with that because it's run by the state, and I feel like the state's taking food out of a local inn owner down the road. But again, these rooms are your high-end, beautiful, wonderful, like a lot of people come and expect, not, the no-name brand hotel, which is clean and fine, but they want the fancier upgrades. So they focused on that. That was the first one they did. Then they did the Elk Visitor Center, which has strictly, it's about elk, it's about the region. The Cinemahoning Visitor Center is all about wildlife watching. And it's everything from the animals that you'll find in the PA Wilds, from the bear to the deer to the elk to the bobcats to anything you can imagine, to the poisonous snakes. And so the state it's the first, they haven't done this anywhere else. And again, it's because of that PA Wilds influence that we were able to get 3 visitor center in areas that economically depressed, and they spent all that money in our area, which meant construction jobs, all that other stuff that goes along with it. But now the visitors are coming. And the visitor center in Cinemahoning is seeing a large increase. It's driving traffic up to Emporium like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I have people coming in all the time saying, we were down at the visitor center and they told us to come up here.
And both visitor centers are now doing much more outdoor programming than they've ever done before.
Oh yeah, there's programs, and it's not just your campground program. It's kayaking. The one center has kayaks and mountain bikes that you don't even have to put a deposit on. You just leave them your driver's license and a credit card in case you don't bring it back, and they just ask for a donation. So they just.
What's the square footage of that visitor center?
Oh boy.
You said it was about a $3 million facility.
Mm-hmm.
It's small.
Yeah, isn't that big.
Large. It's not large enough. Now the Elk Visitor Center.
Yeah, that's 2 to 1.
Yeah, that's a
definitely
pretty big
2
place.
to 1.
But
that was twice the price.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I can find that out for you though. And in that visitor center, obviously you walk in, you have a large room and a big fireplace, and to the left is a large display area. To the right is a very small retail area that they sell, like I said, the artwork. And then they have their offices. They also have a large meeting room because that portion of the county is very remote, and so they've been offering that space too if somebody wants to have a meeting or if they want to have a party or they want to, so they also build kind of a classroom reception room that people can come and use.
Is there a plan where every county gets one?
No.
How do they agree on where to put them in?
It's DCNR.
The state
They
just
come
does
in.
it.
The state comes in.
DC.
And primarily, and both of those, two of the instances, they were in state parks. The Rocky Mountain is not, or the Elk Country Visitor Center is not in the state park.
To some people in our Commonwealth, DCNR power is right behind the governor's.
Sometimes it's higher. There is talk, the one slide showed the bridge over the Kinzoo area. It was an amazing railroad structure that in the 1980s a tornado came and totally destroyed it. It was like one of the longest spans. And so it, you know, all the debris was there. They built an observation deck on part of it, so it's glass and you can look through. There was talk of putting a visitor center in there, and that has died down because of budget issues. So, and there was talk of putting one over in Clearfield too. And again, that, you know, budgeted, but luckily those other three all came in before money really got tight.
What are the annual operating expenses of the visitor center, and how does that get paid?
That, all except for the Elk Country Visitor Center, it's all paid by, it's state staffed. It's staffed with a park ranger, it's staffed with maintenance people, and it's all comes out of DCNR's budget.
Any idea how much it's costing?
I have no idea what they're operating.
Okay.
I
That's
can
a
find
state-
out from
that's-
Lisa.
Both of those are in a state.
Right.
Run a state park, so they're
Yes.
using their money from the state
Well,
park.
the Elk Country Visitor Center is not.
Not
Right.
that,
Right.
the other.
And
two.
that
Yeah,
one,
but
they're
you-
on their own. I don't know if Carla would share that or not. She might. I might be able to get that out of her.
Yeah.
That's a very unique situation over there just because of how it happened with, it was supposed to all be funded through the Rocky Mountain Elk, and then they pulled their funding and they were scrambling because they had told everybody in town, we're gonna build this facility, and DCNR stepped up and said, okay, we'll build it, but you have to staff it and pay for those operating costs. So I can ask her how, and I know that facility is staffed with a business manager and part-time clerks. And I think they have one maintenance person, but that's it. They have trails there, but the trails, coming from a Flatlander point of view, they're even easy for me. They're like really wide and more handicapped accessible, and they're kind of like that limestone, crushed limestone. And they go maybe the longest is at the most a quarter of a mile,
Yeah,
if it's that.
Yeah, but they do.
take you out where the elk
they
food
do
lots
offer.
are.
They do offer, you know, rides, so to speak.
Yeah, a local actually got a team of the Clydesdale horses and a wagon, and they actually give rides around that property and some of the, you know, so that you can see the horses
And
or see the elk.
they do charge for that. It's a nominal fee, but it's another way that they're making money.
Yeah, because they give some of it back to the Elk Country Visitor Center.
Mhm.
So again, it's thinking outside the box when you get to that point. You just, and any resource you can focus on. The PA Wilds focuses on, they don't focus on hunting, the marketing corp, but they focus on fishing. They focus on the trails. They don't focus on motorized trails. That's a no-no in Pennsylvania. You know, if you're talking about the PA Wilds, you don't put a snowmobiler in there, and heaven forbid you put a four-wheeler in there. Even though I sit at the office window and watch hundreds of them go by on a Friday, and they're going somewhere else and spending their money somewhere else, and it's so frustrating. I know you have to have that balance, but
No, they're not literally driven by. They're hauled by.
yeah, but it's so, you know, they want it really pristine and wilds, like you talked about, and especially with the watershed, you guys are probably facing a lot of the same limitations. You know, you can bike ride and you can hike, but as a friend said, if they're canoeists and if they had money, they'd have a motor on their boat. So they're going to come in, they're going to canoe, they're going to leave. They aren't going to spend a whole lot of money. You know, you need the mountain bikers that are putting a lot of money into their bike. That honestly, that Great Allegheny Passage in Pennsylvania has been the best thing for some of those small towns that aren't part of the PA Wilds. I mean, places like Confluence that was ready to just close up, they now have a booming downtown, and they have visitors nonstop. It is just something else. It's, you know, and those people, they have people that just go and pick up the people with their bikes and bring them back to the bed and breakfast. I mean, they never even had a bed and breakfast before, and now they have like 8 of them in their town. I mean, it's just been one, you know, you have to tap in on the people with the expendable income that are spending money on their toys. And the more expensive the toys, the more money they have in their pocket to spend in your businesses. I mean, that's just economics 101. But I have a feeling Catskills, you guys are probably stuck like we are. But with a lot of the wilds have to be very wild. So.
I'm enjoying the conversation, but I'm thinking we probably should break. And if anyone else has questions, we can do them informally.
And I've got, help yourself to the items that are up here. If you want more, let me know. You've got my contact. I'll ship a box down to you, and you have my email. So if you need anything, just say.
Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight, and thank you very much, Tina.
Yeah,
This
no
was
problem.
a very
Thank you for-
interesting presentation.
thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know. I don't know that much about it.
She moved right there. You can